What's up, everybody? Jiraiya here, and we're here to talk about Fantastic Four. And now, obviously, while I was at San Diego Comic-Con, I saw a whole lot of... Oh my gosh, this hair is just not participating with me. Saw a whole lot of cosplayers dressed up like the Fantastic Four, right? I even saw like a really decent Ben Grimm cosplay that wasn't like overly clunky, you know what I mean? Like, it looked very, very good. But the point is, well, not the point, but the point I want to make before I, continue on with this review of this movie is that, as many of you know, I'm not a huge Marvel fan the same way I am a DC Comics fan, right? I grew up more so with, Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, or Adventures of Superman, Justice League, etc. And, with that, I read more into DC Comics. That does not mean I'm not a fan of Marvel as a whole, right? I think what they're doing is great movie-wise. I think right now they have everybody in DC pretty much beat, at least in the recent years. But, moving on. Fantastic Four. Now, with this one, right, quick summary, story, inside cover summary is... Fantastic Four have been the Fantastic Four for 4 years. Lots of fours. If you took shots to how many times I say four, you'd probably be gone before, a quarter way through this video. But anyways, they've been the Fantastic Four for 4 years, right? Everybody loves them. They're essentially both, they've taken the place of both the Avengers as well as, BTS or some other, like, boy band in terms of their popularity, right? Reed Richards is obviously the smartest man on the planet. Sue Storm is... she's the next, like Princess, you guys know who I'm talking about. She's, the politician of politicians. She's doing great. She's a world leader, all that stuff. Johnny, he's doing his thing. He's, underwear model, playboy, aficionado, all that good stuff. Ben Grimm, is just doing his thing. He's Ben Grimm, right? There's also Herbie. He's not an official member of Fantastic Four, but he was adorable the entire movie. I love him. Anyone who hurts Herbie will answer to me. Anyways, we kick off with, hey, they're doing their thing. They're ready to have family dinner. They find out Sue's pregnant, obviously with the eventual god, essentially, of, the future that is Marvel, Franklin Richards. He's going to be, a literal power cosmic fiend. Not fiend literally, but like in terms of his raw potential, he's just unlimited, right? And the Silver Surfer shows up out of nowhere, says, I herald Galactus, right? This version's Silver Surfer is Shala Bal, not Norrin Radd, but the point gets across all the same. They're like, oh, okay, Galactus is coming. Let's figure out what Galactus is. The Fantastic Four flies up into space to try to figure out what Galactus is. They find out, oh, Galactus is the eater, devourer of worlds, and he is totally cool with skipping over Earth if the Fantastic Four give over Franklin Richards, who is not born yet. Not that that's gonna stop him. He basically is just like, let's induce birth or labor immediately because I want this baby, and ain't nobody stopping me. Quite literally, induces labor, and is just like, I'm gonna get this baby. Right, he's quite, not even cradle robbing. Homeboy is womb robbing, right? Or at least he's trying to. Johnny is obviously trying to fight off Galactus. Oh, my knee itches so bad. And they're like, okay, we gotta get out of here, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. They get out, and they're like, telling the public, oh, crap. Hey, Galactus was like, I would have spared your world, but, I need your baby. And the weird thing was that they actually told everybody, at least Reed Richards told everybody, that, oh, all you had to do is give up your baby to save the world. That seems like a fair trade. At least the people were, and in most other movies I'd see, this would have turned into a lot more of a dark, issue than it did in this movie, which... Going with the theme of this movie, and we'll get into it a little bit here, I was surprised that, oh man, okay, good, it could have gotten dark really bad, really quickly, but they didn't, because essentially, Sue Storm's like, hey, you know what, I understand your fear, because she goes out in public with the baby, they're all trying to protect the baby, and she's like, hey, I get it, you guys are all afraid, but here's the thing. I'm not going to sacrifice my baby for all of you. But I'm also not going to sacrifice all of you just to be selfish for the sake of my baby. Oh my god, this hair is not participating. I really wish I had. And, you know, so they eventually, Reed comes up with a plan. He's like, oh, we're going to teleport the world out of place to where Galactus can't find us. So they're like, okay, everybody, countries around the world, let's pool our resources. Let's start getting all this together so that we can do this. All at the same time, I skipped over it, but Johnny's essentially trying to figure out, you know, a little bit of history on the Silver Surfer, because when she first showed up, he chased her, and she said something to him who basically said, die with yours, right? Like her little blessing. When they went over to Galactus's little, you know, buffet line to kind of figure out what was going on before he induced the labor and all that, she told him, hey, this is what the thing I said to you means. So from there, you know, fast forward back to, you know, Reed Richards trying to create a giant teleportation device for the whole planet. Johnny is essentially trying to figure out, you know, like make a cipher, right? A Rosetta Stone based on her language, because there was a bunch of other transmissions that he heard, or like that he was given from Reed. And he's like, okay, I'm going to figure out this language. Anyways, fast forward. At the same, well, actually not fast forward. At the same time, Ben Grimm is like, oh, not woe is me, but he was like, oh, I'm kind of into this teacher that I ran into earlier in the movie, and I'm going to pay her a visit. Also, I'm kind of ugly. At least it's alluded to, because, you know, the big thing with Ben Grimm is like, I'm ugly, I'm the thing, blah, blah, blah. But it's not really hinted to too much in this movie, which was, for me, it was a little unfortunate, because it's such a huge part of Ben Grimm's character. But moving on, we fast forward to the moment where they're like, okay, the whole world has decided, you know, we've saved enough power, enough resources, and we're gonna teleport this thing. And as soon as they're ready, Silver Surfer shows up and, you know, kicks everybody's, you know, teleportation towers over, essentially. I was gonna say something a lot meaner, but, you know, it is what it is. Before she can knock down the last one, Johnny's like, oh, wait, hold up. I know who you are. I can speak your language because I translated your language. I know where you're from. I know your history. I know you made this deal with Galactus. And you know what? I get it. I totally get it, but you can't come in here and come fucking up my whole world, bro. It's like, you killed all these other people by showing him, you know, where to find all these planets, but don't be coming here. She goes, oh my god, it's been so long since, you know, I've remembered all these feelings, blah, blah, and she runs away. And now that all the teleportation devices are destroyed, they're like, okay, you know what? We got to use Franklin as bait, right? We're going to put him in the center of the last teleportation tower. We're going to teleport Galactus on out of here, right? Galactus shows up. A fight ensues. There's a couple, like, wonky things. Like, they've actually put Franklin in, like, a little, like, I guess Galactus-proof, quote-unquote, or, like, danger-proof cradle. And as soon as he's about to, like, cross the finish line into the teleportation area to be teleported away, they're like, oh, let's switch it out after we blind him. And I was like, isn't that a little obvious? You're trying to blind this massive giant, and, you know, and then you're going to try to do a bait and switch, and the first thing he does is like, I caught on, you know. Anyways, fight ensues. They finally manage to, like, he is about to grab Franklin. He grabs Franklin, you know, back and forth battle, back and forth brawl. They grab Franklin as Sue Storm is using her powers to push him into the teleport portal. The portal's open. They're trying to kick him through, and, you know, they realize, okay, Sue's not going to be enough. We got to do something. Johnny's like, oh my god, I'm going to pull the sacrifice play, right? And just as he's about to kick Galactus right into the next universe, Shalla Ball, the Silver Surfer, shows back up. Boom! Beats Johnny out of the way, and then kicks big old Galactus's ass right into that portal. They close it. Boom! Movie over. Right? Oh well, technically Sue does die from overexertion, and it's kind of implied that Franklin's using whatever power he has, power cosmic, to bring her back to life. She's back to life. A year later, they're like, oh, we're one big happy family. We're still the Fantastic Four, though. And, you know, happily ever after. Until 4 years later, we see in the after credits that essentially they're getting paid a visit by one Doctor Doom. And then it ends as Fantastic Four will be back in Avengers Secret War or Avengers Doomsday. I forgot which. I'm not really paying that hard of attention. But that's the whole summary in a nutshell. And I gotta say, very interesting, right? I loved this thought that I saw a while back when Superman and Fantastic Four trailers were like popping up left and right, and everyone was like, it's like a return to campy superhero movies where, oh, it's, you know, it feels good, it's like a comic book, it's like the animated shows, and I couldn't say enough good things about that for both Superman and, in this case, Fantastic Four. The 60s vibe, because obviously this takes place on, I believe, Earth 828, right? So it's not currently, you know, our Marvel MCU as we know it. They're going to get to it, because I know it's Earth 616 that all the main stuff happens. They're on Earth 828. I'm curious to see how they're going to make their way into that universe, right? I know there's that end credit scene in Thunderbolts, so, you know, how they bridge that gap, I don't know. But, you know, back to what I was saying, I love, like, the environment. Like, it felt like they took, you know, the old 60s, like, 40s, 50s, and 60s cartoons and just put them right on screen in, you know, full HD for everybody to see. And for me, that was wonderful, right? It was for me, it was very refreshing, right? This whole world, it felt very lived in. And even though there was a lot of CGI, it felt like, oh, this is what I would have expected the animated series from way back when I was a kid, to actually feel like. And, you know, despite all the CGI, like I said, it felt so lived in, it felt real, despite what it looked like. I was like, oh man, I would love to visit New York City when it looked like that, right? But even, not just that, but the environment provided a certain tone. I mean, the environment and the tone of the entire movie, because, like I said earlier, the idea that you would just need to sacrifice one child for the sake of the world is actually a very dark trade, if you think about it, right? And it's not a trade most people would make. At least because, you know, simply for the fact that, hey, like, that is your child. You know, most people say, you know, I love my child more than I love the world, blah, blah, blah. And in most movies, most media, that usually becomes an extremely violent and dark turn in, you know, in the writing in the movies. But here, it essentially was solved with a good speech and the power of friendship. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I loved it. I really did, right? The tone of the movie felt like, again, the animated series. And I think, kind of like what I said in my Superman video, I think that's more of what we need, is the idea that, hey, just a little bit of hope, a little bit of friendship, and a lot of luck goes a long way in making a better tomorrow, right? So I'm not going to rant too hard on that. I thought it was fantastic. Story for me, I'm going to go 7 out of 10, right? Maybe even 6.5. Not the best. You know, the writing was a little awkward at some parts, especially for Reed Richards. It was a little flat for me, but Johnny Storm and the Thing's chemistry, fantastic. Sue Storm, Invisible Woman. You might be invisible, but girl, I see you, and you are fantastic. Just like the name implies, Fantastic Four. So like I said, 7 out of 10 for me. Now, moving on to the visuals, right? Honestly, Galactus stole the show. Everybody else was cool, but Galactus really stole the show. And, you know, not to say, not just that, but the Herald of Galactus, Shalabal, the Silver Surfer. She was great. She's great. I loved her. I'm in love with her. Enough about that. But like I said earlier, the world, despite it being this futuristic, retro 60s, you know, Fallout type look, at least Fallout before, you know, all the bombs actually fell, was fantastic. And I couldn't get enough of it. It felt like such a lived-in world, as such a wonderfully new and fresh environment for me, and I really enjoyed it. So for me, you know, all that put together, you get a solid 9 from me on that regard, right? Now, the sound design, soundtrack, all that good stuff, I'm just gonna come out and say it, you know, I thought it was dope. However, with that being said, it was only dope for me because of the main theme, which was I'm gonna say it again, fantastic, but that was all I really felt, right? But it was enough for me to put it over the edge. It was like, okay, this is a solid like 7.5 out of 10, right? So 7.5, Fantastic Four. Great job on that. Couldn't say enough good things. Other than that, though, I definitely thought, like, you know, the big comparison right now is Superman in all aspects, and I thought Superman had a better soundtrack overall, but it doesn't detract from Fantastic Fours, right? I thought it was good, but I thought they relied a little too heavily on one soundtrack, or on their main theme, and, you know, it still paid off, but I would have liked to see a little bit more. But as a whole, right, as we bring this video to a close, because we kind of talked about the campiness of it, you know, talked about the plot line, the writing, the characters a little bit, the visuals, all that, all the good stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and give this movie a solid 7.5 out of 10, right? Maybe even an 8 on a good day, right? The only reason I'm giving it the score I did was because I felt like there were some parts of the story that were just a little like, I get it, you know, more cartoony, more campy, that's fine, right? Like the idea that everybody in the world was just gonna be like, yeah, let's all just turn our power off at like 8 p.m. to save power to make this teleportation device. Or that everybody was not gonna go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs as soon as Sue Storm walked outside with her baby and was like, I'm not sacrificing my baby, right? I think that was just a little too unrealistic for me, but again, this is a superhero movie. Unrealistic is kind of par for the course. And the last thing for me is that despite Pedro Pascal being a fantastic actor, I thought he was just very meh the entire movie, right? Very flat, right? If we go, you know, call back to the original Fantastic Four movies, or at least the ones that came out in the early 2000s, I thought the guy who did those movies was fantastic. I thought he was great as Reed Richards, this awkward and geeky, nerdy guy who, yeah, like, he's almost like, flat, not flat in a sense of his personality, but flat in a sense that he's kind of awkward, kind of geeky. He doesn't really know what's going on. Here, just more awkward and robotic and geeky and anxious, but more robotic anxious. And, you know, I thought Pedro Pascal could have did a better job, but I don't think he did a bad one. Oh, and I would have liked to see him do a little more stretchy as far as his powers, because out of everybody, felt like I saw his powers the least amount, and I feel like that was a disservice to him, especially when he was getting stretched out. No pun intended. I know the limit of his powers grew a lot more significant from that, but again, that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you loved it, hated it, or just very indifferent about it, let me know, right? Other than that, if you guys could like, share, subscribe, comment, right? Every little bit helps. I love you guys. I will see you in the next video. Jiraiya, out.